Number 3, the third thing you do on the next page is streamline your organization, your structure, your organizational structure, to maximize ministry and minimize maintenance. You want to make your structure so simple that you maximize ministry and minimize maintenance. Ministry is meeting the needs of people in the church and in the community. Maintenance is maintaining the organization. Why aren't more people involved in ministry today in the average church? The answer is they're too busy because we've got them all wrapped up in maintenance. Committees are maintenance. What you need is you need fewer committees and more ministries in your church. Committees talk about what they want other people to do. Ministries just do it. You need less committees and more committed and more ministries. Now, the most valuable thing that people give you is not their money. The most valuable thing people give you is their time. It's far more valuable than money. So you got to decide what's the most important. If somebody comes to me and says, Pastor Rick, I've got 4 hours a week to give to my church, the last thing I want to do is put him on a committee and turn him into a bureaucrat. I'm not going to put him on the flower committee. I'm going to give him a ministry or her a ministry that they can actually do something. The common mistake in a lot of churches, we take the brightest and best people and we turn them into bureaucrats. We put them on committees. Now, one of the ways you can maximize ministry in your church, you got more people involved in ministry, and minimize maintenance, is to reduce the number of your meetings. Reduce the number of your meetings. Do you agree that a lot of meetings can drain the life out of people with constantly having to go to committee meetings or board meetings or what? Yes. And so we don't expect everybody to be at everything. Jesus did not say, I have come that you might have meetings. And yet, in a typical church, we often rate our spirituality on how many meetings we attend. If you go to Sunday morning, you're a good Christian. If you go to a midweek prayer service, you're a great Christian. And if you go to a weekly Bible study and midweek and Sunday morning, you're a super Christian. Jesus did not say, I've come that you might have meetings. And he didn't say you rate your spirituality on how many times you walk in the doors of the church. It's all about life. And where do you live life? Where you live it, home and work. Did you know at Saddleback Church, in a church this size, we don't have a single committee. We don't have a single committee in this church, not one. Well, we got over 500 ministries. The difference, committees discuss, ministries act. And the result is you have a happier, more harmonious church. I used this metaphor earlier, but in a war, teamwork and harmony, you know where it happens the most? On the front line. When people are shooting bullets at you, you're not complaining. You're trying to protect your buddy, and your buddy is trying to protect you. And on the front line, the goal is to defeat the enemy. But you know what? In that same war, 10 miles back, in the rear echelon mentality, people are griping about the weather and the food. The people who gripe in your church are not involved in ministry. The people who are involved in ministry, if you're so busy rowing the boat, you don't have time to rock it. You don't have time to complain because you're so fulfilled in being involved in what you're doing. The biggest complainers in any church are committee members with nothing to do. Ministry, not maintenance, is fulfilling. So it's important that you minimize the maintenance and you maximize the ministry and reduce the number of meetings. You could probably cut half the meetings in your church out and your church would be healthier. If you have to have a board meeting, do you have to have it every month? How about every other month? How about then every quarter? And then how about annually? And then bye-bye or whatever. Number 4, the fourth key to maximizing ministry, provide on-the-job training. And we call this on-the-job training our leadership community, or we call it SALT, Saddleback Advanced Leadership Training, or we call it our core training. Once you've completed Class 301, you begin serving in a ministry, then you are eligible to attend the monthly SALT meeting. I teach it every month on a Sunday afternoon. SALT, and we meet monthly. It's a 2-hour training for the core. We do about a half-hour serious worship. We recognize all of the ministries. We do a thing called the Giant Killer Award. People do what's rewarded, and we want to honor the people who give their time in this church. And so we create a video of a giant killer in each of the 16 campuses. Years ago, when I was in Israel, I went down to the brook where David picked up his 5 smooth stones and then threw them at Goliath with a slingshot. So I picked up 5 smooth stones, and then I went and I bought a little slingshot from a Arab boy, and I had him mounted, and we called it the Giant Killer Award. And each month we would present it to somebody in the church who tackled the biggest problem. Didn't mean that they solved it, but they tackled it. And now we have a beautiful statue with 5 stones, and we give 16 of these out every month. 1 to every giant killer, whoever's selected in that particular campus. And we watch a video. All of our campuses connected. I'm teaching here. They're all watching live in the campuses. And then we'll have a testimony from that campus and a giant killer from that campus. And it's all interactive. But we do testimonies of ministry. We have reports of the church. I give the insider information. We pray for the church. We commission new ministers. We recognize every 301 graduate and have them stand up. We lay hands on them and commission them. We have an on-the-job training. I'll do what I call a leadership lifter message. It's a lesson on leadership, 1/3 on skills, character, and vision. I want you to write this down. The most warning, don't wear people out with pre-service training. We can often put out somebody's fire. They get willing, they're excited to join your church, they're excited to start serving, and then you go, well, we've now got 8 months of training for this. And they come in all exciting with vision, and then they jump through a bunch of hoops with vision of having to go through months and months of training. Listen, somebody who's willing to train for 6 months before they start, we don't want. We don't want that person because they're a professional student. They're having more fun learning. We want somebody who's chomping at the bits, who's ready to serve right now. So we believe in minimal pre-service training, very little, and then on-the-job training the rest of your life. So for instance, to be a small group host, it's about 1 hour training. That's it. We give you about an hour. But then for the rest of your life, you're going to be learning how to be a better host, how to be a better small group, how to ask questions, and on and on and on. That's minimal pre-service training. Just get them involved. And when somebody, before they start serving, they don't even know the right questions to ask. That's why I think people should not go to seminary until first they've served in a church first. Because they don't even know what a real church is like, than having the right questions. But a person who will sit through 30 weeks of classes, really, they're a professional student. So we believe in on-the-job training, and we get them involved quickly. We found that one-day training seminars are a lot more effective than, for instance, like a 5-week seminar. Provide on-the-job training. Number 5, never start a ministry without a minister. Never start a ministry without a minister. We do not create positions and then try to fill them. We say, we'll start that ministry when the leader shows up. The most critical factor in a new ministry, in the startup of it, it's not the idea, it's the leadership. The most critical factor in a new ministry startup. People have an idea. Hey, I got an idea. Let's start this ministry. Great idea. Where's the leader? Well, we don't have that yet. Well, we're not going to start it till we start it. You know, we were very slow in starting a lot of ministries at Saddleback because we didn't have the leader for them. And if you don't have a leader and you start a ministry, guess who's the leader? You. Yeah, you're it. And so people say, well, we need this ministry. I said, what do you mean we, Kimasabi? If you want to start it, go right ahead. You got an idea? You're it. We call it the you're it principle. You're it. Saddleback did not have a college ministry till we were running over, I think, 1,000 people. We didn't have an effective singles ministry till and with a staff member till we were running over like 2,000. Why? We just didn't have the leader. You never start a ministry without a minister. If you do, it's going to fall on you. The most critical factor in a new ministry is who's going to lead it. Because without the right leader, it's not going to fly, it's not going to float, and it actually could do more harm than good. Everything rises or falls on leadership. So trust God's timing. If you don't have a leader for a particular ministry, maybe God doesn't want you to do that ministry right now. So we're going to be patient. People say, when are we going to start that? We're going to do it one day. We're waiting for the leader. Be patient. Wait on God's timing. Try not to get in a hurry to set up a new ministry. And for heaven's sake, never push people into a ministry. It's a dumb idea. Because if you have to push somebody to take a job that they don't want to do, you're going to have to spend the rest of your time motivating them. And that's a big waste of energy. On the other hand, if they're doing something because they're shaped, S-H-A-P-E, they're shaped to do it, you don't have to motivate them. Those 500 or so ministries in this church, I don't have to motivate any of them. Why? They do it because they have the spiritual gift, the heart, the ability, the personality, and experiences, and they want to do it. They love to do it. When the gifted person comes along, we start the ministry. But if there's no ministry, no interest, we don't sweat it. If you study the book of Acts, organization always played catch up with what the Holy Spirit is doing. They never organize something and say, Holy Spirit, come anoint us. Never, 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 never. They would just look around and say, oh, God's doing something over there. And as it got big, then they would organize it. You know, when we started here, Kay started the women's ministry, just a little Bible study. And, you know, she had them in our home, and the 6 or 7 women. She sat there and her knees knocked, and she taught, and it was just getting started. But it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it evolved, and then the organization came later simply to put a framework around what God was already doing. But it just started with people saying, let's get women together and study together. What I'm telling you is that the fact is most small churches do too much and do it too soon. You do it too much and you do it too soon. Rome was not built in a day, and neither is a good church. So you look around and go, well, we should have that ministry. Not necessarily. Not every church should have every ministry. Never start a ministry without a minister. Now, sometimes people will come to me and say, Pastor Rick, I got this idea for a ministry. And I say, great, you're it. They say, oh, no, I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. I just got the idea. So they said, what are we going to do? I said, okay, well, here's what we'll do. We'll put it in the bulletin. We'll announce an organizational meeting for this ministry, and then you pray that a leader shows up at the first meeting. Because if a leader doesn't show up, guess what? You're it. Yeah, you're it. And that's the important thing. Don't let people come up with ideas that you have to do. Number 6. Establish minimum standards and guidelines. Establish minimum standards and guidelines. You have to think through some standards for your ministries, your lay ministries, because best intentions are not enough when you're working with people. Now, we have a ministry profile manual that gives a job description for each different lay ministry. You got to think through what are the minimum results that are expected in this ministry. What do we expect to do with this thing? How do we measure if it's a success or not? How do we know that it's a good thing? So set up some minimum standards and guidelines. But, this is important, don't bury them with procedures or committees. You can kill a ministry by giving them too many hoops to jump through, too many procedures, too many committees. When people feel called to a ministry, just trust them to run it without running a lot of interference. Now, what I'm about to tell you is one of the most important things I can say today. In your church, as a leader, you have to decide whether you want control or growth, because you can't have both. You have to decide what's more important to you, control or growth. A high-control church is going to have a low growth potential. A high-growth church is going to have a low control attitude toward it. Fundamental decision. Are we going to structure for control or are we going to structure for growth? You cannot have both. You say, well, you know, I'm afraid of wildfire. Some churches are so afraid of wildfire, they run around putting out every little campfire that would warm the church up. Oh, that might turn into wildfire. So they stamp out anything that's warm. Now, at Saddleback Church, Anybody, any 301 graduate can start a new ministry. If you've taken Class 301, you can start a new ministry in this church without a lot of interference as long as you follow 4 guidelines. And here are the 4 guidelines. Number 1, you don't expect the staff to run it. You can start a ministry, but you don't expect the staff to run it. Second guideline, any 301 graduate can start a new ministry if the ministry is compatible with our church's strategy and philosophy. It's got to fit one of the purposes of the church. We don't just do a ministry just because, well, that'd be a nice thing to do. Number 3, anyone can start a new ministry in this church as long as the ministry will not harm the testimony of the church. Now, failure is one thing. And we don't mind failures in ministry. That's how we learn what works. But failure that damages the church's reputation, that's another. We're not going to do nude beach evangelism. That kind of stuff. You know, there's certain things that we just don't go there. You don't harm the testimony of the church. Number 4, you can start a ministry as long as you don't do any fundraising. If you need money, you submit it to the staff for budget considerations. You cannot have a unified church without having a unified budget. If you let every ministry in your church do their own fundraising, you'll turn the patio into a bazaar. Money changers in front of the temple. And everybody's got their car wash and their bake sale. We don't have car washes or bake sales ever in this church. We don't fund our ministries on what other people outside the church are supposed to do. They're funded by the tithes and offerings of people. We teach tithing, we teach giving, and we teach a unified budget. And if it's worth doing, then we'll fund it. But we do not allow everybody to just go out and do their own funding because everybody would be getting an appeal letter every week on that. Now, if a new ministry has an idea and they meet all 4 of these guidelines, what we will do is we will assign them a new ministry guide who walks them through a process. It's about 12 steps. It's available to you. Now, one of the secrets of Saddleback's growth is we allow people to be creative and to create new ministries. People will be as creative as the structure allows them to be. So we let people just come up with ministries we never would have thought up with. Our prayer ministry. Somebody came to me one time and said, we need a prayer ministry. Great, you're it. And that's how it got started. Cancer support. Somebody said, we need to start a cancer support ministry. Great, you're it. People helping people. Backpacking ministry. Great, you're it. Internet ministry. Great, you're it. By the way, sometimes when somebody comes to you with a criticism, they're revealing the ministry they should start. Saddleback Church was the first church in the world on the internet. 1992. Most of you have never even heard of the internet. There was no Netscape, no Internet Explorer. We were using things like FTP, Gopher, and Mosaic out of the University of Illinois. And some techie guys came to me in like 91, 92, said, Rick, there's this new thing called the internet. I said, let's get on it. Let's do it. We always try to be on the first jump of technology. When fax machines came out, we bought one. I think there were 4 in the whole world. I started a weekly newsletter to business leaders, a devotional, and we called it The Facts of Life. and we had this little fax machine over in the corner that 24 hours a day was going like this, and so it was like, one fax would go to Hobby Lobby, and then they would download it to 10,000 other things. And one fax would go to Chick-fil-A, and it would go down to a bunch of others. And we were using the technology of that day. The month that iPods came out, I went out and bought one for every one of my staff, said, we're going to use this for training. And we started putting training on those so people listened to training and asynchronous, so when they needed to get it. And so when the internet came out, well, we got on the internet. You can actually go back on Wayback Machine, that page, and see some of the original pages of the internet of Saddleback back in 1992. That's a long time ago. And we had 4 or 5 guys who were running it, and one day I got this like 10-page, really cranky letter from a 20-something named Shane. And he said, Pastor Rick, the people who are running internet ministry don't know anything, and they're idiots, and they won't let us young guys involved. And he was just complaining, and it was very inappropriate, very immature, and it was a long, long letter. But I thought, what's this guy showing? He's showing he cares about this internet. So I invited him to my house, and I sat him down, and I let him just spew for about an hour and a half. Then I hired him. And he built the first website for pastors called pastors.com. 25 years ago, I don't know how long it was ago. I hired the guy who was angry. He was revealing what he's good at. Bad news is good news. Bad news says this person cares about it, and bad news says we need to work on this. That's how you get better. So one of the secrets to our growth is just allow people to be creative and invent stuff. Celebrate Recovery was invented by John Baker when he wrote me this 11-page or 13-page letter saying, here's what we need. I said, great, let's go for it. And we worked on a plan, and I created a series of values, and together we launched that thing.